Good morning and welcome to the FY25 Consolidated Funding Application ESEA training. You will see our Best for All strategic plan where we have our 3 buckets. I like to link those to our ESEA federal grants. First, I'll start with academics, where Tennessee students have access to high quality education no matter where they live. And that reminds me of Title I and the supplemental funding to help support the high quality education. When I see student readiness and talking about public schools serving the academic and non-academic needs, I think about Title IV. And then with educators, setting a new path for the education profession where we can be a top state, think about Title II with professional development. We have a lengthy agenda today. You'll see a lot of things that you normally do. And we will get started with our updates and reminders. Some important things to remember is that a lot of the pages do link. So when you're thinking about your personnel FTEs, for an example, not only will you add those into your budget narratives, but you have to make sure that aligns to the personnel chart within each title. And if you do add that to any other pages. And please use the accounting manual when it comes to budgeting codes and line items when you're remembering important things, and making sure you're using enough description to where we are aware that it is a federal or state requirement to where we can know if something's allowable. And we will still be collecting pre-K numbers this year as well. With our tags and budget narrative requirements, remember that budget tags help you identify the purpose of a budget item. It allows you to track money and it saves you time and effort. You do assign one tag to a budget line item. There will be one exception this year that I will mention twice, and that will be Title IV Part A with non-public instructional funds. For those of you that have non-publics that participate in Title IV, you will have that non-public instructional fund tag along with one of the other 3. In order to ensure that you have the correct amount for each one, there's a filtering tool within each budget at the top to make sure your set-asides match throughout the application. And of course, always utilize the FY25 CFA guide as you are completing the CFA. These are all the budget tags required this year. You will notice that Title I Part A requires all of them. And with Title I Part C this year, there is a new one with the service period and non-public instructional funds. Title II had non-public added, as did Title III. Title V, nothing changed. Title IV, you will have the non-public instructional funds where you will have 2 tags per line item on that one as well. The budget expectations. Always ensure that your expenditures are reasonable, necessary, and allocable. Ensure you provide enough detail in the narrative so we can see that the purchases meet the above criteria. So that means you have to make sure you're truly explaining and justifying what you need. These are a list of questions to ask yourself when you're completing budget narratives. And remember, for personnel, we want position titles and FTEs that match throughout, and we do not want names. And make sure that you are also given enough details of the position so we know what they are doing. These are a few examples of ways to write budget narratives. When it comes to some equipment, supplies, and materials, you'll notice there's one that just gives a little bit of information at the top, and then the bottom one is correct, where you give a little bit more detail on what is being purchased and for which school. Same thing here with professional development, giving more detail of how many people are going, specifically the titles of who are going, and if you can break it down by schools as well. With the cover page and testing dates that is reviewed by the IDA team, This is the information that has stayed the same. Ensure you include in the URL the name of the test, the purpose, the grade or class in which the test is administered, any tentative dates or dates of which you know they will be, and how and when parents and students will find out about that. And at the time of this presentation being presented until it is being recorded, the testing dates have been released. The allocation section. Remember, when you are adding money to Con Admin, you do this in the allocation section. And as you're doing that, remember your limits. You have 20% on most of the grants, but then within Title III and Title IV, you only can limit, or you can only have a limit of 2%. And remember, there must be a minimum of $100 from each program administered. We do realize there could be an issue with Title III on that. And when you're looking at the percentages, remember you also must include indirect cost as part of each limitation. And as a reminder, the limits are calculated when you're transferring money from Con Admin in the allocation section on the current fiscal year. And this is an example of where you would move your money from each specific title into Con Admin. This is the transferability that is allowed within the allocation section. And remember, once you transfer money from one program to the other, it does take on the identity of the other award program that you are transferring the money into. And this is an example of if you wanted to move Title IV into other titles, the gray boxes let you see where you can and cannot place money from Title IV. The contacts page. Remember, we are going to want years of experience from each contact position. And we do want the years of experience for the specific role that person has within the state of Tennessee, not just that specific LEA. And remember, this page is critical because it is how we send emails. So ensure if a new person comes along that you do update this page for us. I'm going to do a little review of the admin limits because this doesn't only impact Con Admin, but it also impacts any direct administration or for those that just take indirect cost or a combination of Con Admin and indirect cost and direct admin and indirect cost. So remember, this ESEA requirements page is where you need to go to see how much you have calculated for each one. And it will let you know if you have budgeted too much or if you still have more that you can budget. And for those who take direct admin out of Title I, Part A, remember, not only do you look at this page, but you need to go to the allocation designation page for direct admin and add it there as well. Here's another reminder of the grant contribution limits. And with Con Admin and Program Details Administration options amongst each ESEA grant. With Con Admin, when you are completing that section for those that utilize it, remember to include all the duties and responsibilities. So that way we ensure what you have contributed to Con Admin, you are also overseeing. And the FTEs must be based on the percentage of time spent on the administration of the grants. And if you're not fully paid 100% from Con Admin, do identify other funding sources. And if you utilize Con Admin, you cannot take direct admin costs within the grants. For the program details page within the ESEA grants, at the beginning of each one, it will ask you if you're using Con Admin, and if not, you have to specify what is being done. So if you use Con Admin, you simply check that box and move on. If you are not, you will have to complete a few questions. Title I, Part A. Remember on the program details pages to add everything that is supplemental that the schools will be utilizing with their Title I funding. And any coordination of funds and services that are applicable. With the Title I Part A personnel details page, there's one change this year. You still have the ability to either complete the Excel sheet for the regular school year personnel, or you can complete the actual page. If you do utilize the template this year, we do need you to also, there will be a totals on that actual page that will ask for totals. Moving on to Title I Part A, the poverty and allocation of funds. And this is different from the school eligibility page. And do note with this page, you cannot change any information on this one once the original CFA has been approved. There are exceptions with new or significantly expanding charter schools, and there is ESEA guidance on what determines that. And you will need to determine what low income data you will utilize to spiral your Title I schools. You have the choice of free and reduced price lunch, direct certification, TANF, Medicaid, census data, or a household survey that mimics the free and reduced price lunch surveys. Remember, if you utilize a combo of above, if this is for K-12 only, you remove all duplicates. Also, you identify all that apply. So if you use free and reduced price lunch, most likely your school nutrition director is also pulling the direct certification report as well. So you would click both. This year, the direct certification report includes Medicaid. Therefore, if you decide to include Medicaid this year, you would have to select it as well. You will also have to upload evidence this year of how you identified your low-income students and the methods utilized. We do ask all personally identifiable information be removed. We will need the type of method that the student is identified as. We will need an identifying student factor, such as the student ID. We will need the grade and the schools that they are at. For those of you that use direct cert only and are accustomed to using the multiplier, do note if you include all Medicaid in the direct cert list this year, you cannot use the multiplier if you keep the reduced Medicaid students. And do note that is the only change this year is the direct cert includes Medicaid. We are unsure if the pilot program will be implemented again next year, but this is the one caveat for this year. And of course, once you determine that, you will then decide if you want to district-wide rank your schools or grade span rank them. Remember, those that have fewer than 1,000 students, there are no ranking or allocation rules that apply to those who qualify for Title I. And of course, a single attendance area, then there are also no rules for those who are eligible and qualify for Title I. Remember that if you serve any schools that fall below 40%, you will need to select the 35% rule. And you guys also have the ability to either district-wide poverty average or district-wide grade span average on determining how the schools will qualify. You also can prioritize your high schools that have 50% or more. So that means, of course, any school that is served 75% or more is automatically served, but you do have the option that after that, you can prioritize your high schools. And remember, if you want to do school-wide, you may request a waiver to implement school-wide programs or one or more schools if they have less than 40% poverty. And if you did get a waiver, remember there must be an upload. For school eligibility, if you do not want to get a waiver the first year that a school drops below 40%, and this is for the first year only, you can grandfather them in without completing a waiver. Of course, if the school still falls below 40% the next year, you will then be required to receive a waiver. And of course, when it comes to appropriate funding levels, make sure that you do not allocate less than $100 PPA per each school. And make sure when you're looking at distributing funds and what schools qualify, that they are sufficient to provide an effective and impactful program for all participating students. You do not want to water down in order to spread funds across the schools. And at the bottom of the PPA page in column G, you cannot have any more than $50 remaining to spiral. If you do have a school that falls below 35% poverty, you must serve all Title I schools, with the exception of the last one, at the minimum PPA rate, which is 125%. And this amount does auto-populate on both the allocation designation page and the PPA page if you serve a school that drops below 35%. And this is an overview of everything discussed. With students experiencing homelessness, there's not a lot of changes this year. There is one thing that will be a small change that I will mention earlier. Remember, these funds are for all schools, not just Title I. This is one of the exceptions to the set-asides. And do remember, when you're evaluating the needs of the homeless program, that you do include the LEA homeless liaison. And there is a McKinney-Vento needs assessment that LEAs are encouraged to use. Also ensure that your homeless liaisons know how to access the funds so they can support their students experiencing homelessness. And of course, there are 3 types of funding available for Title I or for your homeless students beyond Title I Part A. You still need to answer the questions of how you determine the set-aside amount. And remember to include in description any CBOs that you might have that helps lessen the amount, because you have a great community resources available. Of course, you will describe the transportation services that are available. This is where you will input the number of homeless students. And remember, all LEAs must set aside funds, even though there is no required set amount. It does need to be based, when you guys are looking at your data, on the number of students and their needs. And here are your funding coordination that you will need to complete, and some resources available. With students in foster care, remember to place your foster care point of contact, and that the person knows that they are the point of contact. You will enter the total number of students in foster care, along with the total number of best interest determination meetings that were held during the school year. And do note that it is understood that the CFA is completed prior to the conclusion of the school year, so please only indicate the number of bid meetings at the time the CFA is being completed. And this is an example of where you will input your data. And with your foster care agreements, if you are still utilizing the one from a few years back and they still apply, there is no need to create a new agreement. You upload the same one from years past. And here are some resources. And with your district set-asides, remember that these are set-asides that just benefit all Title I schools across the LEA. And of course, there is an exception to the homeless set-aside that can be for all schools. And this is not a set aside that includes Title I and non-Title I schools. These are specific district-wide initiatives for your Title I schools only. And do remember, there are some required set-asides, and you will have to utilize budget tags for all set-asides this year. And this is a list of the set-asides that is within the CFA. Remember, with the required parent-family engagement for those who receive $500,000 or more, that 90% of it must flow through to the Title I schools. And for those that have non-publics who also participate, you have to include that as well. And remember, you do need to answer the questions for the parent and family engagement for your public and for those that have participating non-public schools. On the related documents, you can either upload a copy on all your copies of pertinent information to upload on this page, or it could be within another page. For example, your foster care transportation agreement can either be placed in the students and foster care page, or here it will link to both locations. Title I Part A S&S update. This year, the S&S will be removed from the CFA. It will be housed under data and information with ePlan, and the finance team will be tasked with review and approval. And the same open dates and close dates with approval apply the same as the CFA. With your Title I Part A neglected, there are no changes, but do remember you do need to update the needs assessment and all MOUs. And if you need any further assistance, please contact Jackie Jacobson. Title I Part C migrant. You will still have to complete the numbers for category 1 and 2 and your priority for service students. Those will be auto-populated with those. And you will describe how you will provide intensive supports to your priority for students, for service students, in addition to those that are not. You will need to complete information about how you do the occupational survey and the individual needs assessment. And of course, how you collect your migrant data and any parent advisory council that is required. With the programming this year, you will determine if it is regular school year or summer services and answer that and tag those as needed. And as a reminder, as of FY23, you are no longer responsible to provide services to your pre-K and out-of-school students. You will address all programming funded throughout the grant. And if you do have any FTEs within the budget, do upload the job description. And here are some resources and support. Title I Part D. No changes again, but as a friendly reminder, you must update the needs assessment and the MOUs with signatures. And if you need any further assistance, Jackie Jacobson is your contact. Moving on to juvenile justice. Remember that in the LEA address book, you must name a juvenile justice point of contact and that the person is aware that they are listed as that role. Title II Part A. No changes from last year, just ensuring everything you put on the budget is included in the program details page. And there is a allowable use of funds if it aligns to your needs assessment that is available. And as a reminder, remember that your expenditures link to your planning process, and that can be completed through your Inform Tennessee that was just done for all LEAs. And you will need to answer questions regarding that. Remember that Title II Part A is for support of school-based staff, such as your teachers, principals, other school level leaders, and paraprofessionals. And remember that professional development must go beyond a one-day or short-term workshop. And if you have any examples to upload or want to upload anything you feel is pertinent, there is a related documents section. A few resources. And now to English learner requirements. Remember the first English learner requirements program details page, regardless if you accept funds or not, all LEAs must complete this. And to name a few, your district-wide ESL programming staff, we will see the next slide for that, how you identify and enroll, how you provide equitable access to programs and services, and the type of language instruction for the non-Title III LEAs. Remember the staff-to-child ratio must be 1 to 35 or less, and of course that is based on the prior year's October 1st count. Remember the number of staff entered for the ratio is an FTE, not a head count. Only state and locally funded ESL certified teachers providing ESL services are to be counted. If the district does exceed that, you will need to provide description of how you will meet the ratio by September 15th, 2024. A few reminders that Title III not only supplements state and local, but federal is included in that. And we know translation and interpretation, most of it is required. So ensure that it is truly supplemental and it goes above and beyond anything that is required under federal, state, and local laws. Remember that Title III is for your active ELs, and immigrant students may be served as well under Title III. Students who have exited may not be served under Title III unless they are immigrant. The consortia budget review, that is for those who are consortia members. Remember, if you participated in the last year, you will need to complete a little bit more information this year. And if you accept Title III programming, remember you must complete this page. And this page looks the same on making sure you describe what you are purchasing out of the Title III funds and how you will measure the impact through your annual Title III self-assessment. Remember, under Title III, you must provide parent and family engagement, and you will need to select D and E on the program details page that you have completed your professional development that is required and that you will have parent and community engagement events. These are a few resources. Title III Part A. This section looks as it always does. So just make sure, though, if you are a consortia fiscal agent, that you include a location in the budget for each consortia member's budget after the initial CFA approval. Title IV Part A. Nothing has changed, making sure that you select and how you determine that the funds are distributed. And remember, there are the 3 content areas of well-rounded, safe and healthy, and effective use of funds. Under the program details page, you will be asked again to tell how you did your consultation and how you developed what your needs were. And that can also be part of your informed tenancy process. Nothing has changed here, making sure under the program description that you answer all 4 boxes. And as a friendly reminder for those who receive $30,000 or more, you must spend at least 20% of the funds on well-rounded and safe and healthy, and spend a portion, which is at least 1% or more, on the effective use of funds, effective use of technology focus area. Do remember, however much is spent on the technology area. Within that, no more than 15% can be on infrastructure. There's a special rule within ESEA on the 15% of what is considered to be infrastructure. And these are a few, but not all, of items that are normally not considered infrastructure, but are under Title IV. And remember, 85% of this must be on the educational technology funds to support your professional learning, and you can have the other 15% with infrastructure. This is where you will select a tag, and every line item must have one tag, and there's the exception of non-publics. And these are the assurances that are at the Title IV section. I will not read over them. You will have time as you're reviewing your CFA. And remember, with carryover, you need to review last year's and make sure what you did not spend on the minimum 20% on well-rounded and safe and healthy and effective use of technology, that if you did not spend all of it last year, you do that once carryover is placed in. There are no related documents that are required, but you do have the option to. A few resources. Moving on to Title V, Part B, Subpart 2. There are no changes. You still use the check boxes to indicate the selected programs to be supported. And this is on the program details page, and you answer the narrative props. Remember that with Title V, this supplement, not supplant, also includes not just state and local, but also federal. And you have the option to upload something in the related documents that you feel is beneficial. A few resources. Class size reduction. No changes this year with Titles 1, 2, and 5. You still complete this page. Not all of them will be open yet. So right now you are only completed the projected enrollment. Remember, there are questions to answer, and answer those thoroughly. And remember, when it comes to class size reduction teachers, you must hire effective teachers. And by October 1st, within the LEA document library, ensure that on letterhead that you have a letter signed by the director of schools that the CSR teacher meets the state qualifications and licensing criteria for the grade levels and subject areas in which they are providing instruction. They're teaching in the field of discipline of the certification of the teacher and is not teaching on a waiver. And of course, making sure that they are a level 3 or above on the team's evaluation. The non-public private schools page. Remember, the E-Plan populates this with a summary of results on Titles 1C, 2, 3, and 4. Note with Title 1A, you will have to complete the school eligibility page within the Title 1A section of the CFA before it auto-populates. Equitable services for non-public schools. You will select the ones that are most appropriate. Remember, with Title I, that is your non-public K-12 low-income students from the LEA's Title I attendance areas that are identified as the funding generators. Title I Part C, that is any K-12 migratory students that are determined to be migratory. Title II is all the K-12 total enrollment. Title III will be the number of ELs K-12 enrolled at the non-public. And finally, Title IV is your total of your non-public K-12 total enrollment. This is how the Equitable Services programs look in the section, and you will need to complete all applicable program details page. If it is not applicable for you, you just simply mark NA. Remember, you do need to upload the affirmation of meaningful non-public schools consultation. That one is required. If you do have the combined form where you have already completed the final agreement, upload that as well. For those who just complete the affirmation of meaningful non-public school consultation only, you will need to have the agreement uploaded by September the 15th, 2024 in the LEA document library. Resources, contacts, and upcoming dates. We have the Federal Spending Handbook. That is the WAT that is in ePlan TDOE resources. It helps you see how it aligns to our strategic plan, and it talks about what each title within the CFA is allowed to complete to do, and it gives examples of things that it can be used for if it aligns to your needs assessment. And then we have the Consolidated Funding application. That's the how. You can utilize this as you are completing your CFA, and it gives step-by-step instructions. And this is where you can find a few of the resources within ePlan, TDOE resources. And this is our divisional coordinator map for who to contact. And if you have any finance questions, this is the finance consultant map. These are some other ESEA points of contact. And a few dates to remember. The CFA is already opened. It is due May the 1st, and you must have full approval by July 1st. Thank you, and please do not hesitate to contact us with any questions.